Hi everybody. My name is Ryan Sorelli. I am one of the employment consultants in the Youth Job Connection program at Yes Employment Services. So today I'm going to spend some time with you, and we want to discuss some very brief tips, strategies, and techniques for your resumes. Resumes are definitely a very important part of the job search process. Definitely can't get very many jobs today without a resume. There was a time where you could just walk into a business without a resume in hand, shake a hand, do a chat, and that would be all you needed. But more and more, that's not the case anymore. So we have to make sure that not only do we have a resume, but we have a resume that stands out and that is going to put your best foot forward, so to speak. And especially in the age we live in of technology, even before all this COVID stuff, employers have already started leaning towards the use of technology for making their lives easier when it comes to finding suitable employees and applicants for their business. Uh, that includes things like emails, even texting, and application tracking programs. So we're going to talk a little bit about those briefly as well. So the purpose today is to do a quick 25-minute, half-hour chat on some of the key points of resumes. If you want more information, you're definitely more than willing to, more than able to contact our office, send us an email, send us a Facebook message, and we will definitely get back to you. If you have a employment consultant already at Yes Employment Services, then definitely reach out to them as well. That's what we're here for, is to help with everything job search, and definitely resumes are a part of that. So hopefully this is our first kick at the can for this type of setup, so bear with me. If you do have any questions, please use the comment section on this feed, and I will try to answer them as they come up. But once again, we're not going into too much great detail, but we're going to cover some of the main points of resumes. So what I'm hoping to do, and it disappeared on me, was to share my screen. Let me just give me a second here to see if I can find it. It was there, and then it got blocked out once I started this this feed. So bear with me. So basically, I wanted to talk about the purpose of the resume, outside of simply just saying it's a job. Uh, I wanted to talk about the different styles of resumes that exist. There's three main styles we talk about quite often, but there's definitely more varieties out there. But there's three main ones we're going to talk about, and kind of talk about some do's and don'ts when it comes to resumes. So as I said, just bear with me here as I'm trying to find the share screen button here, which it may not. Wonder if I do this. No, I'm not seeing it. Okay, so I'm gonna have to play around with that as I. Oh, maybe down here. New message. New options. No, unfortunately not. So I do apologize. I'm not able to find that screen sharing button. So, um, so as I mentioned, so let's talk about what the main purpose of a resume is. So when I explain it to people, I like to uh, take a different mindset to it, or take a different viewpoint. So let's imagine you're going to make a decently large purchase. You're not just going to the grocery store, you're not just going to the corner store, you're going to make a big purchase. So I like to use the example of buying a vehicle, right? So quite often, one of the most, if not the most expensive purchase that we, investment and purchases we make in our life. So we want to make sure that we are spending our money wisely. So we're not just gonna call up a dealership or walk onto a lot and just say, I want that car, hand over the cash and go, right? We're going to want to know more about it. We want to know the specifications, right? We want to know whether it's the horsepower. We want to know if it has Bluetooth. We want to know, does it come with extra sets of tires, right? We want to know all these details about the vehicle. So when an employer is looking to hire, when they're deciding whether or not they're going to make that investment in you, they're making a substantial investment. Yeah, they're paying you, but there's also stuff in the background, whether it's WSIB, premiums, CPP contributions, all those things. There's a sizable investment in hiring and training. So they want to make sure that they know all the specifications. They know what they're getting in that training or in that individual, in that product. So when you're doing your resume, you have to think about yourself as a product. You have to think your resume as an advertisement listing the specifications for you as that product. So we want to make sure that your advertisement puts all the best specifications forward and make it as easy as possible for the customer, in this case, the business or the potential employer, to read it, understand it, and decide if that is where they want to make their investment. So that's the main purpose. It's an advertisement of you, the product. So we want to make sure it's a good one. We want to make sure that it's putting you as forward as the best, or at least hopefully a top candidate, and give you the opportunity to close the deal, so to speak. So just like if you're going to a car dealership, you may have an idea of what you like. You may have done your research ahead of time. You get to the dealership, the salesperson comes out, and their job is to finalize that deal, right? Is to close the deal. Is to say, yeah, you like this? Well, let me sell you on a few more things. So when we talk about selling the deal or closing the deal and job searching, that's that interview stage. So the resume, the purpose of the resume is to advertise you as a product, but also to give you the opportunity to close the deal, and that is the interview stage. So that's gonna be another video we'll definitely put together. So when it comes to resumes, it's tough because there's really very few no-nos or wrong things to do. We're going to talk about a few of them shortly. But in terms of how they look and how they're styled, well, that's going to differ from industry to industry, job to job, person to person. There's different techniques, different styles. The main ones we talk about are the chronological, the functional, and the combination. So chronological resumes are usually the most commonly taught, especially for those who had to take a career study course in high school or took a employment readiness program at a post-secondary level. Quite often what's taught is the chronological resume, and that's that classic listing your jobs and your experiences and your education in order from most recent back to least recent, and you're listing pretty much everything. This is also probably the most common amongst youth who don't have a lot of work experience yet, because they don't have that ability to pick and choose what they're putting on their resume or what to focus on. So a lot of times it's kind of what we start with. But as we progress throughout our lives and our careers, then we start looking at potentially things like the functional resume, especially where in situations where we might be changing careers and we might not necessarily have the work experience that specifically tailors towards the job we're applying for, but we might have the skill set in other ways. We might have those transferable skills, or we might be able to make a connection between one skill set to that new job. So a functional resume, and what I like to often call it a skills focused resume, because that's probably more better explanation of what it actually is. So it is a resume where you're focusing primarily on the skills, not necessarily on the details of the experience itself. So you're pulling out the vital skills, you're pulling out the vital information from the what you did, the accomplishments of what you did more so than the where you worked. So this could be done with actually having its own skills focused section. So having your main header, your name, your contact information, having hopefully some sort of objective or catch statement at the beginning. Sometimes you have like a personal profile where you talk about, maybe availability to a degree. If you're gonna talk about availability, make sure you're saying you're fully available. Don't lie, but if you have issues with availability with regards to childcare or something along those lines where you're not available to work any shifts, and just don't talk about availability at that point. Wait for the interview, wait for that question to come up. Employers like to see that wide open availability. So if your situation is that you have a wide open availability, then that's what you want to put on that in that profile section. So once you have your profile section, we talk about kind of your personal profile situation. Then that's where you could throw in a functional or skills focused resume. You can throw in a section of some, like, a handful of bullet points of specific skills. So if you're applying to be a automotive service technician, for example, then that's where you look at your job specific skills. You talk about your experience repairing engines, your experience repairing and changing brakes, or whatever it might be, right? So you're going to focus on those hard skills in that section. And then you'll list, okay, these are the jobs I worked. And then that a lot of times end up being in reverse chronological order as well. And that's where we get to the combination, where you're keeping that time element in play, so reverse chronological order, but you also focusing on your specific skills first. So it's kind of a hybrid of the two. When I used to work with my more experienced clients, my middle-aged to older clientele, a lot of times that's what we try to do, is focus on those combination resumes where we highlighted the skills. We put more emphasis towards jobs that were relevant or had that we can make that tie to. And then if there is still room and still made sense to put on, then we list the other jobs behind it. So chronological is time-based. Functional, or as I like to call it, skills based resumes, focus on the skill sets instead of just necessarily the jobs you did. And in combination, it's taking all those factors into play and basing your resume based on that. So we talked about the purpose of the resume. We talked about some of the main formatting of resumes. And if you have more questions about functional versus chronological and what's best for your personal situation, then definitely reach out to us. If you have an employment consultant, definitely reach out to them. If you don't have one, call us or stop by our resource center, keeping in mind COVID health and safety in place. But you can register with us or meet with an employment consultant in the resource center, and they can help clarify any of those questions. So we're about halfway through the half an hour window. So I do want to spend some time discussing some do's and don'ts when it comes to your resume. So some of the don'ts, and there's so many. There's as I mentioned earlier, like there's not a lot of don'ts, but there's probably a handful. I picked 5 that I think are pretty big don'ts. And then I can do 5 do's. And once again, there's so many tips and strategies out there. Once again, talk to us, and that's what we're here for. So my first don't is do not go beyond 2 pages. There are extreme rare examples where an employer might ask or may say you may go to a 3rd page. Then that's fine. At that point, do that. However, in most cases, 2 pages is the max. I got a resume sent to me the other day from somebody, and it was 3 pages. No, we need to reduce that. I mean, if you're like, there's very few jobs where 3 pages is going to be acceptable. In a lot of cases, 1 page is fine. Most of the clients I work with, quite frankly, their 1-page resume is stronger than anything we do with 2 pages. Because once you get to a 2nd page, a lot of times, depending on your professional history, that 2nd page, you're just stretching. You're trying too hard at that point. So they rather have a quick snapshot, right? So it's like going back to the car example. I'd rather see a nice, clean 1 sheet of paper with a snapshot of what the specifications are, instead of having to read through 5 pages of information, and a lot of it which may not be, the average consumer is not going to care too much about, to be quite honest. So just like employers, give them what they need. Don't try to give them too much more. So one exercise I do with my clients a lot too is called the perfect employee exercise, where I say, think like the employer. Put on that employer's hat as if you were hiring, and say, what would you look for in that perfect employee? What would be the ideal person that you would hire? And then go through that list and say, okay, these are the things I want to focus on because these are what that employer probably cares most about. Do not put your photo on the resume. This also happened the other day. I got a resume sent to me, and sure enough, there's a photo on it. Photos, if you need a photo of yourself for, like, let's say a modeling job, that's where a portfolio comes in. In terms of just your resume, you do not put photos on your resume. Photos, unfortunately, open yourself up to potential discrimination, which employers are not supposed to discriminate. However, they may not tell you, but it happens, right? There's whether they know that they're discriminating or not, it's something that could be in play. So don't put pictures on the resume. It opens up too many things that can go against you. Sensitive information. So we don't see this a lot anymore, but I know that over the years I've seen it a few times where somebody will have a resume that they bring to me to look at and it has their birth date on it. That is something that should not be given out freely. That's something that should only be given out when necessary or to friends or family. So avoid that. I haven't seen this too often, but sometimes people will put their social insurance number on their resume. Don't do that, especially if you put your social insurance number and your birth date. That's trouble, right? That's an identity thief's dream come true. So don't put too much sensitive information that may come back to hurt you on there. Fancy fonts or characters. Don't be putting or using fonts that might be hard to read, or I guess say too small, right? So we have to keep in mind that some employers out there are getting a little bit older. Some of them might have a harder time seeing. And if you're using any font smaller than 12 or 11 in terms of 11 and 12 point in most fonts, you're probably too small. It's going to be hard for them to read. And quite frankly, if they're getting 100 resumes for a position which is not unrealistic for a posted job, then they don't have the time to go through 100 applicants. So if they grab a resume and they look at it and they just can't, their eyes can't focus, or it just doesn't have that ease of read to it, then they're just going to toss it aside. So you want to make sure it's easy for them to read, and that includes choosing appropriate fonts and appropriate font sizes. So the fifth don't that I'm going to talk about is it's hit or miss. Some people say do it, some don't. My personal opinion, I'm looking out for future you and future whoever might be helping you with your resume down the road. My experience with preset templates has been not the best. So I know Word has preset templates. I know you can go online and create a resume online. The trick is a lot of times they make you pay for it to download it after, so they won't release it to you until you pay. But even through Word, yeah, they have some nice looking templates, but the problem is, especially if you're not very computer savvy to begin with, making edits down the road is very difficult. I am relatively computer strong. However, some of these templates I get, they have like embedded cells and tables and this and there's just so many things going on in the background that when I go to just add a job or change something, a simple change that should take a minute takes 10 because it throws everything off and you got to readjust. My professional opinion is avoid preset templates for your own frustration down the road and for the frustration of whoever might be adjusting your resume down the road. It's just, it may not be worth the effort at that point. And that's where, once again, Yes Employment Services, come and see us. We're pretty good at this stuff. This is what we do. So we will, if there's a style you like, and I've had clients do this as well. If there's a resume you find online that you like in terms of styling, send it to your consultant or bring it to the resource center, and we will do our best to match it. I've been able to decently match a lot of resume styles. People say, "Wow, I really like this one. Can you do this for me?" I'm like, "Yeah, give me a day," and go back and forth to it, and I play with it, and I get it. Relatively pretty similar. So that it's a free service we offer. Come and use it. We'll do that for you. So those are my five don'ts in terms of a resume. So five things that we should be mindful of, or we should be doing. First and foremost is a professional email address. Once again, off the get-go, I talked about being in the technology age we are in, that employers are relying more and more now on emails and online application systems. Well, that means that they're seeing your email address as you send them stuff. So that it's not just the email address, by the way. So you definitely want to make sure your email address is something on the lines of your first name dot your last name at Gmail, at Outlook, at whatever it is .com. Play around with those. You may have to use your middle initial if you have a common name. I have 100%, not to boast, but I have a 100% success rate of finding professional email addresses for all my clients. I've had many clients say, "Well, my name's taken. I can't find one," and usually within 10 minutes, I'm able to nail one down. So once again, come see us. We'll help you, but get a professional email address, and not just the email address, but also keep in mind the name you have on the account, because that's the name that pops up in somebody's email address. There's definitely been cases where I've received an email that looks like like a scam or a phishing email or something, and I've deleted because the name was not a name I recognized. In fact, it was like a character name or something, and I didn't recognize the email address, and the email was kind of jumbled up. I didn't open it because you don't open email you don't know. Went to my junk box. Client calls me the next day and I'm like, oh, that was you. So I had to go back and find it. And if I might be making that mistake, employers are probably making that mistake as well. So professional email address in terms of what the email address actually is, and making sure that the name tied to the email address is appropriate in your name, first name and last name. Uh, Kind of going off the beaten path here, but shared email addresses. So if you share an email address with a significant other or your parents, now is the time to maybe segregate email addresses. Um, have your own professional email address. I definitely have gotten emails in the past from Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Like, no, I want it from Joe Smith. I want an employer's going to want the email from the actual candidate, not a shared email address. So it's free to make email addresses. It's okay to have multiple. I have like 5 or 6 different email addresses. Most of them are professional, but I have my couple personal ones too. So do that. Um, make sure you highlight once again the specifications that the employer is going to want to hear. So make sure you highlight the skills, qualities, education, experience that's going to be relevant to the position. So that's where you may want to make a separate resume for each job you're applying to, so that you make it highlighted and specifically for that job. Use power words. So if you Google power words, you'll find list power words for resumes. So these are like your descriptors, your as you lead into your points, right? So developed, um, managed, uh, like those powerful words that are just not your everyday words. So they're called power words. If you Google resume power words, the things that you want to lead your descriptions of what you might have done or your achievements with. My fourth do, which is kind of funny because I think I'm kind of losing this in the presentation at this point, but is being clear and concise. So your document should be clear, concise, and easy to read. So kind of already touched on that a little bit. Everything should have its own section. It should be clearly labeled as such. So like having your objective or your introduction summary, having your personal profile, having your experience, education, community involvement, each having a clearly defined. I like to have it as like a complete underline across type thing, so that it clearly when one section starts and and it ends. So clear, concise, easy to read. Kind of already touched upon that. And the fifth must do with resumes is get at least one person to review, at least one. Review for grammar, because definitely grammar mistakes don't come off very nice. Spelling mistakes. I can't remember what the exact stat is, but it's a high amount of employers with one spelling mistake. That's enough for them to um, just toss the resume. So make sure that you don't just necessarily trust Word, Make sure somebody else looks at it as well. And make sure somebody else looks at it for just overall appeal, overall aesthetics, right? Does it look good? Does it flow well? If you were the employer, would you give this resume a second or third look? Would you give this resume a phone call? Because going back to what I mentioned a few minutes ago too, is employers get so many resumes, right? They only, if they're posting a job ad on Indeed or Job Bank, especially for anything that's like an entry to mid-level job where not a lot of experience is required or not a lot of education is required, they're getting, um, it's not unusual for them to get 100 resumes in a week. They're not going to go through every resume with a fine-tooth comb. So they're going to be 10, 15, 20 seconds. They're going to take a look. First off, do the eyes like it? Second off, in the first quarter of that page, the first 5 or 6 points they read or lines they read, is that something that makes them want to read more? Make them want to read more. So it's good to have somebody else review it, a family member, an employment consultant from Yes Employment. Uh, Maybe if you have a family friend who is an employer who's used to getting resumes, and say, hey, go to them and say, this is my resume. If you were hiring, what do you think? They'll hopefully give you the honest truth of saying, I would toss this one, or no, I like this. I'd recommend this, this, and that, right? So use your resources, use your networking, use your relationships to your advantage. And yes, employment is one of your relationships. So use this to your advantage. That's what we're here for. I get that a lot. People saying, well, I'm sorry to bother you, but can you do this? It's like, you're not bothering me. This is this is exactly why I'm here. So absolutely, I'll help you with this. So do not hesitate. Don't be afraid to contact us. So I did have, once again, I couldn't get the slides going, but I did have a slide that was had our information. So basically, if you want to visit us in person, our office is open for the resource center usage. I believe the door is locked, but if you hit the doorbell, we will have somebody answer and do all that fun COVID screening. Unfortunately, so for those of you who are watching from North Bay, we have a couple more cases today by the sounds of it, unfortunately. So we are definitely at the point where we need to be more careful than we've already been very careful, but like really making sure. So we will ask those health and safety COVID check screening questions. You will have to wear a mask. Uh, but we have the services there. We have people there to help you with all of this. So we're at 149 Main Street East, so right across from the Capitol Center. If you want to call instead, we do offer virtual services over the phone, 705 476 3234. And if you want to send an email instead, info@yesnorthbay.com, and that will get directed to the best person to help you out. So thank you very much for giving me half an hour of your time. I'm not seeing any questions or comments, but if you have any, definitely feel free to throw us a Facebook message. I will stay locked into this account for the next little while and check the Facebook messages. Otherwise, best of luck with your job search. Best of luck with putting the resume together. Do not hesitate to contact us or come and see us, and we will help get it to that next level. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your Monday afternoon.